Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmidt. Today, we're going to talk about goal setting. I am about to kick off Module 4 with my group today, my Thrive group. And so I've been preparing around goal setting. And then suddenly I realized it's middle of December, time to get on your soapbox about New Year's resolutions. So here I am. I get to talk about goal setting for two wonderful reasons. So the first thing I want to do is just help you out with a couple of definitions around goals and a couple of things that might help. And then I'll get on my soapbox about New Year's and New Year's resolution. So the first thing with our goals, we always talk about SMART goals. So let's remind ourselves once again, okay, what's a SMART goal and why do we do it? All right, so SMART, there are various different acronyms to it. The one that I teach in my programs is specific. So that means we're going to be very specific about exactly what it is we're trying to achieve. I have fallen prey to many times wiggle room, like too many wiggle room words in my goals or in goals of my team. So we have to be careful about how specific we get. And so the best thing that I would actually say to test how specific you're being is to look back and try to measure it and say, okay, how would I know that I actually got there? So if I said I'm going to read more books, it's very simplistic, but I'm going to read more books in 2025. And I went back at the end of 2025 and I'm going to say, oh, did I read more? I'm going to say, wow, that's not very specific. So very simplistic example, but hopefully you get the idea. So that's the first, that's the S. So M is the second one, measurable. So we need to be able to measure it. So taking our book example, can I measure more? No, I cannot. So what is my measure? So how am I going to measure that? I'm going to chart it off, that sort of thing. So we want to be able to say, yes, I actually made a difference, see the growth, that kind of thing. The third one, and this is where the words get all messy and people like to change the acronym, but I say agreed upon. And that's because there's two things. Some people will say agreed upon and some people will say achievable. And I think that's how I originally learned it. But when you get to the R, you'll see why achievable makes absolutely no sense for it to be because it's very redundant. But A, agreed upon, we have stakeholders no matter what goals we set. So if I say, hey, I want to work out more, my family still becomes a stakeholder in that and they must agree upon it. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to be able to do it because if I'm not able to go and work out more because, something gets in the way, family is there, I need to be there for them, or, everybody wakes up before I get a chance to work out or however that works. If it's not agreed upon by the stakeholders in my life, then it's not going to happen. So it's a very important thing that we put out there. Then we get to the R. So R is realistic. So meaning that it's not trying to change the world overnight. So I want you to remember the R because I'm going to come back to the R a lot, especially when I get on my soapbox. So realistic, meaning we can't change who we are overnight. Okay, remember that. And the last one is time bound. So we have a due date, a target date, however you want to say it. So SMART. The other thing that some of us like to add onto it is kind of an so SMART goals. Basically, what the is expected results. And what I really mean by that is how do you know, what is different when you get there? What is different about it? So I read more books. Okay, now what's different? I know things off the top of my head. I know a little bit more about one of the topics of the books that I read. I get more references maybe from movies or comedians because they seem to be seem to be very well read. Like those would be some examples of what's different around me. So these work really well when it's kind of an obscure goal. And a lot of the goals that I work on personally and people that my clients work on are a bit more obscure. Like they want to improve their coaching. Okay, well, you can come up with a generic 1 to 10, say, okay, well, I am at a level 5 comfortable with coaching. Okay, and I want to be at a level 7 comfortable with coaching. Okay, that's measurable, specific, no specifics, measurable. It's agreed upon with me, and we'll say we have to talk about it with my coachees to make sure that, they're agreed upon it with, right? Is it realistic? Well, to bump up 2 points in confidence in coaching seems pretty realistic and time bound, you say by the end of the year. Okay, so meets the smart. But the is really going to be the important part of this one, because when we say it's 5 to 7, like, okay, what does the 5 mean and what does the 7 mean? Probably depends which way the wind is blowing, if I remember, right? But really, what am I trying to accomplish by becoming a better coach? Okay, well, if I'm a leader and I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to have, more open conversations with my team members. I am trying to get them to achieve their goals better. I am trying to make sure I hold them more regularly because I'm not comfortable with them. So I cancel them a lot. Okay. So you start to kind of get in there. It's like, okay, so what is really my intent behind that goal? And that's kind of where the smarter comes in, because when I set a goal, like becoming a better coach, or, becoming like listening better, or any of those things, using less verbal pause words, like, so, right? When I set a goal about those things, there is a reason I set the goal. And I did a whole podcast around the intent and keeping that intent in mind. So this is very related to the intent, right? When we keep that intent in mind, we can be a little bit more flexible and movable as things kind of change with our goals, right? So we don't want to be moving the target date all around because we're not working at it. But if we have circumstances that come in or changes, like let's say you're working on coaching, but now you've got 2 different team members, like 2 left, 2 came in, you added a third. Now you've got all these changes. So maybe your comfort level is going to change. So now you're going to say, well, my comfort level, I've got to reboot it with these ones, but these ones I'm going to try to really work to an 8 because they've been here longer. They're going to help me. And you have to, things will change. Things will change that you don't have control over. So it's important to keep the intent in mind so it doesn't look like you failed, even though you're actually making good progress, and it doesn't look like you've succeeded, even though you haven't really met the intent or improved the area at all. So it's really to get us where we actually want to be. That's that intent. That's the expected results. That's how we make really good goals. Second thing, size matters. I know I like to make little funny comments. Size of your goals matter. And I say this particularly because this is one of my big challenges, but so many times we think of these like big year-long goals because we set 12-month plans because, life happens perfectly in 12 months, right? I don't think it does, right? But we like to pretend it does. It's a good milestone marker. It works. But we set these year-long goals and we're like, I'm going to achieve this revenue target by the end of the year. But really, when you look at it, it's like, it's just kind of a number out there, and it's an easily very smart goal. But all of your goal plans only have to do with like part of it. And, you end up with all these kind of overly detailed plans or not detailed enough plans. And it's just too complex. You got too many pieces moving because, when you're trying to drive revenue, it's like, okay, you're meeting people, you're filling the top of the funnel, you're closing the bottom of the funnel, you're nurturing the middle of the funnel. So you're doing all of these things. And it's almost too much all in one goal. And it gets distracting. It's like, it makes sense because it's all aligned. But for those of us and many others in life who sometimes struggle with like too much happening, it's sometimes better just, okay, let's focus. So the first 3 months, we're going to focus on filling the top of the funnel and building habits around that. Okay, well, that seems reasonable. I'm going to, do these networking events. I'm going to post on LinkedIn, regularly 5 days a week, that kind of thing. And I'm going to follow this content plan. And, like you kind of can do top of the funnel things, focus things, and that works. After 3 months' time, in theory, you've created some habits around some of that. Now you're working on nurturing. So you're building up some things to nurture the middle of the funnel. And maybe you kick that off after 2 months and you got your team starting to develop some of those nurture sequences and all that sort of thing. So you can kind of see where chunking them out and making smaller goals can feel less overwhelming, can make them feel simpler, and build this beautiful, wonderful thing called momentum. So engineered moment for a minute here. So momentum, the equation of momentum is velocity times mass. Okay. So when we talk about like a really big, heavy goal, right? It's this big monster. You can build momentum by moving the monster really slowly, or you can build momentum by moving the small, tiny goal really fast. Either way, the number's the same and the result is the same and the momentum is the same, but you have to look at who you are. So me, I need a little bit faster results to keep my momentum going. Other people, taking off the big chunk and just, peeling back all these little bits as you go, maybe that works for them, right? But me, my personality, it does not work for me. And I know many of my clients and many, as we're kind of moving through this like fast-paced, need results, instant gratification culture, small goals moved very quickly are easier. They feel better, right? You've accomplished something. You have to cross it off your list. So size matters. Don't feel like you have to set this big giant goal. Like maybe you can set like, here's my strategic objective that I'm going to hit this revenue target. Okay. But here's the goals that I'm going to work on to get there. All right. So keeping all of this in mind, I'm going to hop on my soapbox here because I love doing it. So there is nothing magical about January 1st. We don't change who we are. We don't become a completely different person, and we don't magically change human nature and suddenly become able to change, do a complete 180 on our behaviors. Okay, it just doesn't work that way. And I chuckle now when I think about all the years that I've spent sending these New Year's resolutions that just kind of went out the window by January 2nd. Or, I see other people now still trying to say, I'm going to drink more water, work out every day and eat better and do, and so they're just trying to make these complete life changes all starting January 1st. We don't work that way. That's not humans. That's not realistic. That's the R. Okay, so back to the R that I was talking about. So this, I like to call it rethinking your resolution. So what I want you to do is I want you to think of a New Year's resolution or a 2025 resolution or whatever year you happen to be listening to this episode. Think of this resolution as the start date, if you will, for your goal. Okay, you can have it be out there the 12 months, or you can use, the small mass in the momentum equation, and you can say, I'm going to do a January goal. I'm going to do a January 1st 2 weeks goal, right? Like you just start thinking like chunk size things. It keeps it exciting. It keeps it fun. And it allows you to achieve a lot of things in a small period of time or in a long period of time if you look at the whole year. And this is a great way to build confidence in yourself and goal setting, but also a great way to build confidence and momentum in your team. So it's important that we practice things before maybe practice it with our team, but we don't try to shove things down to our teams that we're not willing or we're not actually doing ourselves. So take a stab at it. Use these tiny goals in your New Year's resolution, and then bring your team along with you. And instead of thinking that we make this become this completely new person on January 1st, let's just think that, okay, it's a great start date. There's motivation there because, it's January. I don't know, we're turning over a new leaf, that kind of thing. So great motivation to kind of keep it going. But then let's meet a goal by January 15th. So then it's like, that was exciting. I'm going to meet another goal by January 31st. And then I'm going to meet another one by, and so you can start to build the momentum. And the good news is that once we start to build small goal momentum, we get better at it. And then we can stretch it out and do bigger goals. So if you found this helpful, I would ask you to share this with a friend, hop on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to listen to your podcasts, leave a review, because that is how we can share this episode and share these other episodes with other people. So hop on there, leave a review, give me some feedback, comment on the YouTube channel, and I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmidt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.